Okay, round two worked.
Back at it.
Oh, back at I can't believe I guess I'm all screwed up. But we have
You're good.
a great guest on today. We're really rolling, getting a lot of great content, talking to some great coaches over the last few weeks. I mean, really, we're getting revved up for the season here. We have a great coach on to talk today, Coach Ruley, the head coach of Rowan College. From back in the day when I was a kid, it was Glassboro State. Now it's Rowan College. For all those years, that's Mr. Rowan donated that money and took the program to the next level. A storied Division III program
Rowan,
that
you.
that's going through a new coach after having a coach that's been there for quite a while. And this is a program that we really think could continue to rise again because it has a history of being an excellent program. So we're really excited to have Coach on today. Coach, how's everything going?
Everything's great. I appreciate you guys for having me on.
Coach, I know you got a lot going on, so appreciate you taking the time because we know how that is, taking over a new program, especially kind of later in the whole scheme of things. So we appreciate you taking the time, man.
Absolutely.
Coach, give everybody your background in coaching, you playing as well, so everybody really gets a full breadth of where you've come from. And I know with college coaches, it could be quite lengthy, but cover all the things that you think are most important in your coaching career.
Yeah, so I'm a South Jersey native. Grew up right outside of Atlantic City, New Jersey, in a town called Margate. Attended Atlantic City High School. Went to Rowan. Had a couple stops before that, but ultimately started my on-field playing career at Rowan in the spring of 2009. I played from 09 to 12 there. Won a championship. Had another opportunity to go to the postseason as an at-large bid at one point, and just definitely had a tremendous ride. And we won a lot of football games. And right out of college, I knew I wanted to get into it. I was actually working at my family's sub shop in South Jersey, like in late July, and I got a phone call from a guy in the profession, and he was like, "Hey, I have a buddy down at Towson University who's looking for like an entry-level defensive guy." It was like July 27th. I went down there, I interviewed. It was, "Hey, like, we're not giving you any food, we're not giving you, we're not giving you anywhere to stay, no money." And they had like 100+ people that applied for this job. And on the way back from the interview, the defensive coordinator, Matt Hackman, called me, and he's like, "Hey, like, we really loved your energy as a young guy. Like, we'd love to have you down here. Do you want it?" And I was, I hadn't even gotten home yet. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm definitely interested." I'd been working a ton of jobs like a dog that summer, so I'd saved up a bunch of money, and ultimately ended up living like in the film room that pretty much that whole entire fall. 2 computer chairs, put my feet up, go to sleep, put them down, back on the computer, use the locker room to shower, use the equipment room for my laundry, and just grinded. And that first season, in 2013, I was lucky enough to be a part of a program that went to a national championship game in Frisco, Texas. And that was like a tremendous first step. Even at the time, I had the perspective to be able to like kind of take a step back. I remember at pregame at the national championship being like, "Man, like, some guys do this for like 40 years and never even make the playoffs. I'm on like the biggest stage in year one. Like, this is insane." Ultimately we ended up losing that game, but it was a tremendous ride. I was then, the very next January, like a week later, got a job at Muhlenberg College up in Allentown. That was like the ultimate blessing for me. I ended up working for a guy in Mike Donnelly, who's not with us anymore, but tremendous coach, my mentor, taught me a ton about 3-4 defense and really taught me more about how to have relationships with players that go well beyond the field. The one thing I'm telling guys here is like the one thing that always stuck with me that he said was, "Be demanding, not demeaning." And that was always something that really, stuck was, I've never understood these guys who believe that yelling their heads off at young men is going to be the recipe for success, but to each their own, but ultimately at the end of the day, was there for a couple years, made a postseason as an at-large bid, won a bowl game in another year, and then went down to a Division II school that no longer is open in West Virginia called Alderson Broadus, with special teams coordinator, linebacker coach there. We won the first ever GMAC championship. We were a 9-2 football team. We actually beat Robert Morris that year. At first game of the season as an FCS program, and finishes the number 2 defense in the country. And then that next April, had the opportunity to, meet up with a guy that I had worked with, at Muhlenberg. He was the offensive coordinator at Muhlenberg. He took over as the head coach at Susquehanna. And we had worked a year together at Muhlenberg, and then he had been at Susquehanna for 2 years prior with a different defensive coordinator. And, that DC moved on, and he had the opening, and it gave me the ability to, coordinate defense for the first time. And, was there since April of 2017. Had a great run, won a ton of games, back-to-back conference championships, the last Centennial Conference championship that we were a part of, the first landmark championship in conference history, this past year. And, we're the only teams to beat the defending national champions in Cortland at their place, which was awesome.
Hard to win there. Definitely hard to win there.
Very hard to win there, especially being down, I think, 2 scores in the second half or in the fourth quarter, and we made some plays and, ultimately got out of there with a win. I told the guys, like, hey, let's not even shower. Let's hop on these buses and get out.
Get out now. Get out.
And but just a tremendous ride. And yeah, Coach Accorsi steps down at the end of April, which was kind of, a surprise, I think, to everyone. And
yeah,
as soon as I saw that news, it was like,
boom,
one-track mind. Like, this is what I've been waiting for, this opportunity 100%. To have the chance to come back and lead the program that gave so much to me as a player. And, I got hired, I think, on June 20th, had the 25-foot U-Haul van on July 1st, moved into our new spot on July 2nd here. And, we've been cranking up ever since. So.
It's an amazing ride. From being a player at Rowan to coming back to your alma mater coach, I think that's a tremendous respect that the program has for you, not just as a coach but as a person, right? Because you don't see that a ton. I mean, you see it here and there, but you don't see it a ton where they hire their alumni back. And I think it's just a tremendous honor to attribute to you. Talk about what that's like coming back as the head coach after, obviously you've coached a lot of different places, but coming back after being a player that was a star at your own school. What was that like coming back here?
It's been a crazy, I would say, academic year, right? I always think about things from like September's to August or August to July's in terms of, things. And I mean, it's been a crazy year. I had my first kid. I had a daughter at the end of October, pretty much in the hunt for the postseason. And then, this whole transition into coming and now getting the job at the place that kind of gave so much to me and having such a warm reception, from the athletic director, Dr. John Giannini, who, has done tremendous things as a coach, won a national championship here at Rowan in basketball, went to LaSalle as a head coach and made multiple Sweet 16s, just have the utmost respect for him. A lot of super successful alums who also lead programs here, like in baseball, field hockey, men's soccer, just a ton of, pride in their program because not only they want to do a great job at, their profession, but because they're alums. So that's a pretty unique thing about Rowan. And I think that's the other thing I've learned fairly quickly is like, at some places, everybody really cares about their program. And then beyond that, if they win, it's nice, but, there's not a ton invested. Like, I think the really cool thing that I've learned is that like these people want to see Rowan football at like the peak because they're alums, right? And a lot of them, when they were here, was kind of in a era of, when Coach K.C. Keeler was here, when they were ripping off, national championship appearances and that type of stuff. And they were undergrads at that time. And it's a lot of fun. It's very humbling, kind of talking to alums from different eras, getting to talk with, John Bunning, who was the coach before KC here, who's a super, well-established and respected coach. We had an awesome conversation, and, just talking to some other like big time alums from other eras, and, my buddies who are like my best friends in the world, who, are guys that I'm still to this day super tight with. Like, those guys are ecstatic and over the moon that, somebody that was their roommate in college and a really good friend of theirs, is now leading the program that they have a ton of pride in. So, I mean, it's been a roller coaster of emotions, just in terms of kind of trying to figure out, hey, like, this is awesome, but it's time to get to work, right? But at the end of the day, just trying to take it all one day at a time and really embrace and enjoy the journey.
What were some of the things that you really had to, because you getting the job fairly late, right, in the recruiting process, to say the least, right?
Damn.
To put it mildly, what were some of the things that you had to? Now, I preface this with saying, obviously, Rowan has a good foundation, right? So it's not like there's a foundation that you had to, you're going to build obviously on everything, but it's not like the house is torn down or anything. Obviously, a long-time coach. So, but what were some of the things that you had to come in and really kind of try to figure out, shore up, because you came in a little bit later with coach retiring?
Yeah. A couple of the biggest things I think were the staffing situation, right? Like, I'm still going to call the defense as the head coach. I learned from a guy pretty early on in my career, and the head coach I had just worked for, he had been up for other jobs over the last few years, and he had talked to people that he respected. And one of the best lines I heard was just, do what got you the job, and I think that's something for me that, like, we've been really successful defensively. And, I've had a lot of success at my most recent stop as a defensive coordinator. And so for me, it's like, okay, what has gotten me here? Well, it's been relationship building, culture building, and, defensive schematics. So the three things for me that I think, so our ability to recruit, high character, super talented individuals that know we care about them beyond the field, building a culture, right? That's something that's always I've been super passionate about, and if anybody's ever been on any of my socials or been around the programs that we've been a part of, like, they see that that's like super well defined and guys really embrace that.
Yeah, it's really laid out as well. Like, you do a great job of defining that this is part of who we are and what we're going to be about. So you definitely do, looking at your socials and stuff like that, it's very easily visible. That kind of jumps out to you that this is the staples of what we're going to do.
Yeah. So I think when I look at all that, really it's okay. Now, how do I take that? And I'm trying to really reflect on my first year at Susquehanna, right? Because obviously, as you built at Susquehanna, you got to add pieces, but guys were already embedded within the culture. So there was less necessarily, culture building and more time to focus on the smaller details and add scheme and add things, right? So I'm trying to take a step back and reflect on, hey, like, what was it like establishing that defensive culture at Susquehanna 7 years ago? And how does that translate to me establishing what I want the team culture to be now, especially on the super tight timeline, and then on top of that, get other guys on staff that kind of fit that same mold, that have that same belief system. Some of the guys that we're bringing in are guys that I've worked with in the past. Some guys we are retaining, and then other guys are guys that I just have a ton of respect for, through, professional development and meeting them. And when some of these jobs become official here in the next couple of weeks, I think that some people are going to kind of raise their eyebrows a little bit about, the kind of the staff that we're putting together here. I'm super excited about, the direction of everything.
Yeah, it's you're in a great spot, like that whole Philly area, South Jersey area where you grew up, has become a real hotbed in recruiting, especially I would say over, it's always been pretty good, but in the last 10 years, it's really become a hotbed. The Syracuse head coach, obviously, was from there.
Yep.
And for better or worse, me and Derek have seen it, 7-on-7, there's so many clubs that are like players all over the place. Like when we go and we play, like and that whole Philly, South Jersey, even like northern Delaware area has become like a hotbed of skill talent, right? Skill talent, shoreline talent too, but we see obviously a lot more, of the skill talent, and it's always been a really good place. But talk about, what that recruiting. Now, obviously, you're going to be recruiting all over, the Northeast and specifically, obviously, PA, New Jersey, New York, and I'm sure Delaware. But talk about what that area is, being Rowan, being in that area. What is that like from a recruiting standpoint? What do you kind of expect there?
Yeah, so you touched on it a little bit. Definitely, the skill player piece, and I think the tradition in football. I mean, the awesome part about being almost a regionally recruiting school versus when I had to play against Johns Hopkins, for example, they have a national recruiting search. Is like, fortunately for us, Jersey, Eastern PA, Maryland, like they play some pretty good football, right? So when you talk about the South Jersey, Philly area, I categorize that as the guys that call it pork roll, which is the right way to, address that meat.
Come on, man. You're talking
I disagree with that, but that's okay.
Two North Jersey guys, man. Like
Taylor Ham in North Jersey.
I got to adjust. Pork roll guys are bigger playmakers on Saturdays. I'm making that a shirt.
Shit. Like, come on, man. Like, you're also talking to a Montclair State Red Hawk here, too.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
Come on, bro. It's all good. Listen, since I've relocated, it is what it is.
You're going to see
people can call me a sellout. They can call me whatever. I've adjusted. It's pork roll for me now. I've adjusted.
I live down here now. It's the same thing. So
it's just not worth the argument anymore.
So I'll drop a little teaser for you. You're going to see some pretty cool stuff coming regarding that with the Montclair Rowan football game moving forward here.
I like it. Coach, anything you can do, anything you can do to bring that back. I love it.
There's gonna be it's I don't wanna crush Coach Palazzo's, it's his brainchild, but we got something going right now. It's actually in legislation in New Jersey State Congress right now. And it's gonna be a bowl game between
I love it.
Rowan and Montclair. That's
amazing.
It's going to have some major implications on what we call that breakfast meat officially in the state of New Jersey.
I love it. Coach, I love it because, look, it's been a rivalry for God knows how long. It was back and forth when I was a player. It was there well before I was there. The fact that Coach G is a Glassboro guy to begin with was like a huge thing. I mean, it's just like, and obviously,
there's no trophy games in the NJAC at all.
Zero.
So we played two trophy games every year at Susquehanna. Right. And it just elevated those games, just because that was a piece of the whole thing, right?
And those games are already like that to begin with. Now you tie anything to it, and you're good to go. But listen, that's awesome, Coach. I love that.
To get back to the recruiting thing, the thing that we're going to look for, I'm going to talk with guys about really both sides of the football. Defensively, I've been talking about runners and strikers, right? Like, we're going to be a defense that's built on, like, we're going to run super well to the football, and we're going to be super physical at the point of attack. That's going to be the brand. Offensively, we want playmakers. We want guys that can make people miss in space. We want guys up front who love Aunt Jemima and love making pancakes. That's what we're going to be about. And, you want to have to, when the chips are down and you got to run the football, like, we want to be like, hey, I don't care if everybody in the stadium knows we're running the ball. Like, we need this 1.5 yards, and that's got to be the mentality, right? And so I love, kind of the fabric of this place, and what I loved when I was here is, like, it is that blue collar, it is that hard, and that's the same for a lot of the NJAC schools, in terms of that mentality of the guys you have. But, like, this is a meritocracy. Like, you eat, we all eat, right? And, like, just having that mentality of, like, it's going to be about, hey, like, if you show me that you're the best guy for the job, I don't care what year you are. I don't care what the guy did before. Like, and this is my first meeting. I talked to the guys. I go, listen, you could have been Coach Accorsi's favorite. You could have been in the biggest doghouse. I'm not necessarily super religious, but, all your sins have been wiped away. You've been absolved of all your sins. And everybody starts with a clean slate. And come August 13th, when the chips are down and the heat turns up, like who's about it and who's not. And those are the guys that are going to, play for us this fall and moving forward. And, I just want the New Jersey community, the greater mid-Atlantic kind of, DMV too. Like we're going to recruit Baltimore heavily. That was an area that we've always had a ton of success in. With some of the out-of-state scholarship adjustments that Rowan have made, it makes it really doable for us. And even going across the bridge to like Delco, Chester, the Philly Catholic League, like the Lehigh Valley up in North Jersey, like those are the areas out of the state that we're going to be targeting initially, but I was talking with one of the guys on staff yesterday, and the mentality needs to be, if you're not a full scholarship player, why are you leaving the state, right? Like that's, if you're not going to school for free, then there's no reason to cross that bridge, right? And so that's got to, like, we got to make the experience, the student athlete experience here, super high level, scholarship level, just in terms of, the things that they're provided, the covers they're provided, the splash reels we put together, how they feel appreciated, the coverage they get, right? All that type of stuff. And we've accomplished that to some degree, at where I'm coming from, but I'm really excited to kind of put my flavor on it even more, here at Rowan. So
that's phenomenal. Me personally, as a kid, I loved Mrs. Butterworth. But as an adult, I had to move to Aunt Jemima because there's so much sugar in Mrs. Butterworth that I'll have me comatose sleeping for 5 hours. So I had to move to Aunt Jemima, a little less sugar, just as good a flavor, just a little less sugar.
I've actually pivoted to being a natural maple syrup guy.
Nice.
I can't do it.
I picked like that's
good for your health.
It's too real.
Yeah.
Good for your health. I got a question about from a defense standpoint. So, the 80s, you go back to Lawrence Taylor era, right? And the Giants were a 3-4 defense, right? Then the 90s, the 4-3 became a huge thing. That's what the era I played in. The 2000s, you saw a shift to like different multiple defenses where the 3-5 became a big deal. In the 2010s, the 40 multiple, that's the first time you saw like a lot of more 40 multiple became a big deal. And now as the passing game, the 30 multiple or 3-4 multiples become a huge thing. Talk about what makes the 3-4 defense so flexible and what you really like about running it.
Yeah, so it's funny that you say that because, most weeks of the year when I'm scouting an opponent, I can't get my hands on them playing against a 3-down defense to save my life, right? Most people, at least at the college level, I think are in that, 4-down mindset, a lot of quarters, with that true like DB as that overhang player, under defense. And they might get a little flavor on 3rd down or in pass situations, but you see that a ton. But what I love about the 3-4, the best example I can give you, there was a guy that I coached my second year at Muhlenberg named Mike Luby, who at that year was an All-American and was the leader out of anybody as linebackers for sacks in the country. He played that boundary stand-up position for us. He was probably 5'10", 195 pounds, but super elusive, could make guys miss in space. So if you got him on the move, like crow hopping into it, he was a ton to handle. And if we were a 4-2-5 or a 4-3 defense, he would have been standing next to me on the sideline. Right. And so like, I think that what's awesome about what we do is, our defense is predicated on athleticism. Therefore, like we really embrace tweeners, right? Like we don't need that true 3 technique, right? Like that guy's going to be on the move for us almost every snap, right? We don't need those inside linebackers to be, 240-pound guys. If they're 240 and they can also run, like awesome. But like
bonus.
But like for us, like the premium is on speed and athleticism, the way we play defense. So we move every single snap, right? So there's not a single snap in my 66 games calling defense that we've been static, right? So ultimately, when you look at how we're set up, it's just that it's, I always equate it to like, hey, like there's a reason why there's weight classes in combat sports, right? So like if the O-lineman is 50 pounds heavier than me, and I just decided I'm going to just go straight ahead into him for 60 snaps a game, like I'm probably going to end up on the wrong side of that. But we're sticking and moving, right? We're going to for, to kind of stick on that analogy, we're going to have a ton of different punches in our toolbox, right? We're going to slip in and throw an uppercut, throw a body shot, then pop back to the outside, right? And we're going to have that type of deal. And so when you line up in front of us as an offense, we stem into 4 down, we stem into bear, we stem into different 3 down fronts. And now all of a sudden we're bringing a 4th, a 5th, a 6th guy from different places. Sometimes it feels like they're coming out of the ground, and that's kind of what, we've embraced as our identity. The symmetry of it is something that's super, important to me. My ability to really, in the 4 down, you pretty much know where that 4th guy is coming from all the time, right? At least for us, like the 4th guy could be a corner, he could be a safety, he could be, and then bringing 5, any of those combinations of any linebacker and a DB. Right, I'm still trying to figure out double corner blitz. That's the only one we haven't figured out yet, but I hope to get there at some point. But
I like that double corner. I like that.
But that's the one we haven't been able to bust out. Maybe against like a 32 personnel unit this year, I'll throw a double corner at somebody just to get it off the checklist.
Just to get it on tape, coach. Get it on tape. Then you can listen. Then you're set because you can go and you can clinic on that across the country. Everybody in the world is gonna want to know how the hell you pull off a double corner. Like, you'll be set.
So what you just said there, which is really funny, and we've always kind of embraced, is like, the guy that I used to work with for 5 years is my right-hand man at Susquehanna. His name was Alan Zamaitis. He's a
that's my man.
College football legend, and he was
legend.
And he's a DB technician and super high intelligent as a defensive backs coach. And I was lucky enough to have him as my DB guy when I was at Susquehanna for 5 of my 7 years there. And he'd always laugh because inevitably on Thursday every week we kind of have like our practice done, and I'd be sitting there and I'd be looking at the whiteboard, and all of a sudden I would just be like, what would they do if we lined up like this? He always called it Thursday visions, right? And I would just like, we'd have some crazy like presentation and like the guys expected it. Like we'd come out for Thursday walkthrough. I'd be like, guys, all right, here's what we're calling it. It's a 1-word call. Here's a 1 signal call. The coverage is tied in. We get into this look. Here's what I want. We walked through it one time. We ran it at our offense in like a competition period, 1 rep. If I liked how it looked, it was in the game plan. And then Saturday we'd run it, and it might be the only time we run it all year. But to your point now, like it's on tape. It's something that you got to like invest time in. And that's something that's awesome for me is like, for us, it's super cheap because our guys just embrace like the spontaneity and all that. But knowing that like, hey, like the other team now is going to take valuable time to be like, hey, how are we blocking this? Right. And then ultimately they're kind of chasing ghosts. They start to 100%. Like, well, what if they do this instead? Like, what if we did, so it's really awesome. And it's been a lot of fun. And that's a credit to the guy that I work for, and Tom Perkovich too. I had total
allowing you to do whatever,
total autonomy defensively. I earned that over time, but even initially, he was like, "Hey, like I trust you. Like go do it." So,
AZ, I know very well. We used to be on the camp tour with us when we were running events around the country.
Amazing.
Yeah, in Florida. Yep.
Coach, I think one of the things you said. Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
Yeah, now he's now the director of recruiting, right, for Penn State.
Yeah. And that was awesome for him. And it's funny, right? Both of us, we talked about that about a month ago. We stay in touch like pretty much weekly. I mean, I was on the phone with him yesterday, and we, really just that was his opportunity to go home, right? And so for him, like we've resonated with that, like over the last month, even before, like while I was in the interview process here, he was just like, man, like. They would if they hire you, it's a home run because like he knows how much passion I have for this thing in general, and now you're adding the fuel of hey, like now it's the place you care about more than anywhere, and now you get to be there while you're doing while you're living out your passion, and he's right. I mean, I already feel like sleep is optional right now for me. It's because I'm just so energized and I'm so grateful and for, all the support. And I want to make guys proud, to be Rowan football alums, continue to make them proud to be Rowan football alums. And now that weight's on my shoulders to, make that happen. So.
That's fantastic. Go ahead, Derek, you had a question, right?
No, I think, when you were talking about your scheme and your system and all that kind of stuff, and you said, you're embracing those quote unquote tweeners. I think that does wonders for you recruiting wise, because, most of those guys are going, they're not going to be recruited at some of those other schools, but there's still, some amazing, great football players. And now your system, you're embracing that, saying, hey man, like, you're on the top of our recruiting board. Meanwhile, you might be, 7 or 8 on somebody else's, but you come here, dude, you're going to be plugged in right now, putting you in good situations to utilize what you're great at. And I think for your recruiting wise, that just sends you on a whole nother level.
It does. And, I think for me, like, I've always laughed at the guys who, like, the way I could call it is like screen peek, like, hey, like this guy's been offered by this school or whatever, like, or hasn't been offered by this school or whatever. Like for me, like I'm super confident in our ability to evaluate and project guys into what we do. And so like, if another school is recruiting him or isn't recruiting him, to me, that is completely irrelevant. Like, and they might feel the same way. Like we're recruiting a guy, but it just doesn't fit what you do there. Right. And so like, I'm really confident in our process to, evaluate and project guys and develop guys, but you're 100% right. Like, there's a lot of like awesome athletes that
they just get caught up. They get, hey, they're under 6
They're
foot.
not immeasurable.
They might run a little bit slower of a 40, but
they're not the height. That's where the tweener is. Right.
Well, the other piece of that, right, is like the whole, I love this in recruiting when guys are like, hey coach, like, what do you want me to come in weighing? And I'm like, dude, I don't, are you the most explosive you can be? Are you the fastest you can be? Are you the most athletic you can be? Like, keep gaining weight the right way. And when you feel like your weight is hindering your ability to run and change direction,
that's it, bro. Like,
that's your ceiling, right? That's your ceiling. So, yeah.
No, there's no doubt about it. That's I think those hybrid athletes, especially at Division III level.
Oh God,
because
they're everywhere.
There's a ton of those kids that would be, let's say, FCS players if they, from their on the field play.
Inches.
But right, and you could get a ton of those guys at Division III, and they could be a star in whatever position you think they fit best. And that's the great thing about those guys, because your job isn't hinged on bringing in a guy that has the right measurables, as you might remember when you were at Towson, right? At FCS, like you can't just if you're bringing a guy that doesn't have the measurables as far as like height, he better be a barn burner speed wise. And if you're standing on, on a table for him, he better be the guy, because that's your job, right? But at Division III, it gives you flexibility to find the playmakers, I think.
Well, we always said, and even at Susquehanna, right, where like we ended up getting to the point where we could be very picky in who we were bringing in, and we would talk to guys about like, hey, it's okay to be undersized. It's not okay to be undersized and average, right? Like even for us, there's, hey, if you're a 5'7" corner, like you better pop, like you better like be super twitchy. You better like be not afraid of like mixing it up. Like you better be a teched up guy or a guy that attacks the ball well. Like it's okay to be undersized, but it's not okay to be undersized and average, right? So I always laugh when like every year inevitably, I don't know why, but Aaron Donald is the guy that gets brought up as like
all the time, right?
Look at him. Like he's not whatever. I'm like, yeah, he's a genetic freak. Like, he might not be 6'3", 305, but like, have you ever seen the guy go through bag drills? Like, hey, listen, if you can go through bag drills like him, you would also have a full scholarship. Like, it's not just because of your height and weight. I promise you.
Right. They, 10 years ago, they brought up Dwight. It was Freeney, right?
Yeah,
and now, quote unquote, Micah Parsons is not a D end, but he's a linebacker. He's a safety, moved all the way down. That's all he is. Yeah. But they like to bring up these like. I'm like, do you realize what kind of freaks these guys are?
Like they're the 0.1% in the 0.1%. Like they're the biggest freaks amongst the biggest freaks. Like
guys just don't understand that, right? It's like you don't get like even the whole transition from high school ball to any level of college ball. Any level. Guys get so caught up. Division One, FCS, Division Two, NAIA, Division Three. Because I always have to fight for this, right? As a Division Three guy, it's like, oh, you played D3. It's like, did you understand the guys that were on my roster, like in Division Three? Like,
Guys
you're
that got
still
all
talking,
state, guys that won all state awards, like guys won a ton of stuff.
It's like, dude, like this guy right here should be at a different level. He's just 5'8", right?
But-
Or one
Yeah,
set, like,
Ted wasn't athletic.
whatever in a 40 speed time. Like the guys that you're still playing around, every guy on your roster now was that guy at his high school or wherever. And now it's, how do you separate?
You know what I love? So Jim Margraf, who used to be the head coach at Hopkins, who also passed away in the last few years. I had a ton of respect for him, but he was always so funny about like kids in Maryland, and they recruited nationally, but kids in Maryland who thought they were above like Division III football. And he was like, I want you guys to come out to our game this Saturday and tell me who you're better than. Like, we have kids that are running around that are dudes. I mean, them specifically, I mean, they got guys from all over the country that are ballers, and you're sitting there going like, you think that like, and listen, there's Division III is the biggest division in all of college football, right? So inevitably there's going to be the biggest, discrepancy in talent from the top teams all the way down to the bottom, right? So like, yeah, if you watch the 243rd and 244th team play against each other, yeah, you'd probably think that Division III football is a joke. But come watch two legitimate top 25 teams square off, and I'll tell you right now, like, you wouldn't think that it wasn't high level football. You're going to see a lot of really talented guys battling it out for 60 minutes.
Yeah, the difference is just literally height, weight, speed, and pure athleticism at the highest levels, right? You could have a guy that's a Division III guy that could have played at a higher level, but as you move up the levels, the general athlete is the 50. The 1 through 50, 1 through 60 on your team is at a higher level. You could have a Division III level that squeeze in there, because you see guys that go to the NFL. Mount Union used to send them. Rowan used to send them back in the day, into the old Casey Keeler Wheeler days, and he used to send them, and so you'll have that, and I think that is in today's recruiting, and maybe you want to talk about that a little bit. With the transfer portal and the things that are going on there, I think that there's an education opportunity for the recruits to understand where there's some really good opportunities. And in the older days, I should say, meaning less than 10 years ago, it was kind of a thing where you went down a level because that gave you an opportunity. Now they're transferring laterally up and down type of thing. What when you see kids that want to come in and play Division III, that might be, I don't know, maybe one of your top recruits, right? And they think, oh, well, I fell to Division III, quote unquote, right? I was on that borderline. I fell to Division III. Or you get a transfer prospect that's available that could become to you. Kind of, what are some of the things that you try to tell them when they ask questions about that part of the world?
Yeah, so I tell guys all the time, first of all, I think that, so I'm in favor of the portal for a few different reasons. One being just like, general treatment of players in programs. Like, if you feel like the place hasn't done right by you, and that doesn't mean like you haven't got enough touches or whatever. Right. That means like, unfortunately, like basically what you were told in the process, like whether it's off the field or in the program, it just didn't really match with what you believed you were walking into, and some guys have more guidance than others coming out of high school and more resources to bounce things off of. And other guys are really doing it on their own, and so I think that it's, it was always like fairly hypocritical to be like, hey, like coaches can just leave and, do whatever if they don't like their situation. But these guys, they're going to be like harshly penalized if they want to change their situation. I thought that was always a little interesting, but I will say that I think there's a really big correlation right now between what's going on in the transfer portal, which I would in a lot of ways call a pandemic, and social media. Right. And I don't want to sound like the old man on the porch right now that's like screaming, get off my lawn. But, I do think that and I tell this to guys like when I'm in the high schools and recruiting is like, don't make a decision for like that one Twitter post that's going to get you 100 more likes because you're going to say that you're a higher level football player just for the sake of saying you're a higher level football player. And then 6 months from now, you're calling me again, and here we go into that vicious cycle. And I don't know what the number is today, but I know that there's like thousands of guys that our names are in the portal that will never play college football ever again. Some of that is ego. Some of that is bad advice. Some of that is, people that are handlers of theirs or parents or loved ones who are gassing them up to think that they're valued higher than they are. Like I've always said, like really with anything in our country, like the market dictates your value. Like
100%.
Like it doesn't matter if it's post-COVID and there's fifth-year guys and the transfer portal, and that's why I don't get a scholarship or whatever. Like, yeah, for some guys, obviously the numbers are the numbers, and that's going to be true, like the fringe guys. But it's been a trickle-down effect, right? Like, so those guys are high-level FCS players. The low FCS players are now high-level Division II players, right? Like, and so on and so forth. But what happened was the guys that believe that they're scholarship players have now been sold that bill of goods of, hey, come walk on and earn it, right, at our place, and knowing very full well that like maybe 1 out of 50 guys, are going to actually ever achieve that. And ultimately, like the other end of social media is like those success stories, those outliers are like magnified majorly. Like, hey, like this guy walked on, he was a 0-star.
The Ruley story.
And now he's in the NFL, and like he got it out the mud and he grinded, and it's like,
yeah, that's one human.
Sure. Like, how about like go where you're wanted, right? Like, how about go somewhere that's going to value you from like day one, right? And I think that like that's something we try to preach is, and listen, it's the responsibility is on you as a lower level coach to provide a awesome experience where guys feel like it's not some Mickey Mouse operation. It's not some club sport. It's not some thing that's not cared about, right? Like we had like the green screen rooms and the splash reel videos and the multiple jersey combos and the gear we'd give out and and just a ton of different things that made guys love the experience and feel like that they were, in a lot of regard, like they might be getting broken off with gear and experience more than some of their buddies who are playing Division II football at a school that's not well funded, and I always tell people this, and I got some flack on this with a high school coach this past recruiting cycle, because a guy asked me, hey, like, have you guys ever thought about going Division II? Because he was super interested, but he was implying like, I would love to go there, but I also want to be known as a scholarship level football player, right? And I was like, hey, like, that's kind of a different structure. It's not really how it works. But ultimately, in a lot of cases, Division II schools invest in scholarships and Division III schools invest in facilities, right? And so, like, athletics gets X amount of dollars. And so, like, obviously that's a generalization. There's some awesome Division II facilities. There's some awful Division III facilities, right? Like that's not a, a catch-all, deal, but like, hey, like we're investing our money in your experience, right? You're still going to be able to get grants and merit-based scholarship and financial aid, but we're just not giving you athletic money, right? So, and that was always the funny part, right? Is like, well, isn't you getting a scholarship really about not having to pay money? Like, well, what if I told you that we could offer you more money, bottom line, than a Division II school that is going to give you athletic money, right? Like, if you're paying less out of pocket to come to us, like, isn't that the better deal? Like, like it's one of those things where you're like, isn't that the goal of getting a scholarship? Is it being more affordable for you? Right. So just having some of those conversations, and really at the end of the day, though, allowing them to know that, listen, I already had my college experience. this is about you and your family doing what's best for you. I'm just trying to give you my transparent, raw opinion on the whole landscape. And by the end of the day, I wish you the best of luck. And if anything ever changes, you still have my number, right? And I've never been the guy to MF a dude because he chooses to, go somewhere else or any of that. And ultimately, like, and this isn't the reason why, but ultimately, like, that's come back in spades, right? Like we've had guys that spin back around 6 months, a year later. I had a guy who went to Wagner that I recruited in 2019 out of a South Jersey school, who this past season played for us at Susquehanna. 4.5 years later, he was a red shirt and then COVID and whatever. And like he entered the portal and I DM'd him and he was like, "Hey coach, I was actually just about to text you. Like I always loved our interaction." Like he was on campus a week later and he deposited, I think, like that day. And he, and so it was an awesome experience even so many years later. But yeah, I mean, everybody's got their situation. I love the freedom of it, but like buyer beware in terms of like thinking the grass is always greener. And then on my end, like recruiting transfers, you always got to vet them, right? Like they're in the portal for a reason. Hopefully you can figure out what that reason is. And I'm never going to sacrifice our culture for like short-term, like talent acquisition. So, there's always going to be the balance of like giving guys opportunities that are good players, but really only if they fit within like your cultural expectations.
That makes perfect sense. A lot
Absolutely.
of more than ever in the social media era, the athletes are allowing their ego to make decisions on their careers, and I think that's a huge mistake. And maybe it's their ego, maybe it's the parents' ego, maybe it's they're not educated as even though there's a ton of information out there. Because there's so much information out there, they may not be educated exactly on the process. It's one of those weird things. You could probably at your fingertips find exactly the information you want, but they don't know if that's always the truth, right?
Yeah.
So that's a very, very difficult thing. And then I thought you touched on really the affordability too. So like if you're not a guy that's getting a full athletic scholarship at like a FCS FBS level, even Division II for the most part, they're breaking up money, right? So knowing what you're actually paying for school, and obviously Rowan being a state university, that's going to be a lower cost, especially for Jersey athletes. Obviously, it's going to be lower cost. So knowing how you can fill those gaps in and what you're actually fundamentally paying at the end of the day, and getting it as close to zero as you can. I think that's a big deal because let's put football aside. In today's economy and marketplace, as far as jobs are, you don't want to be saddled with all kinds of extra money coming out for no reason when you could go play football and kind of keep your costs under control. And then obviously the guys who are scholarship guys, that's a different situation. But the other thing I would say is, athletes always talk about, I hear this all the time. I'm sure, as a coach, coaching, as long as you hear this, I know Derek has. Unless a guy goes to some big time Division I school, they all feel like they're somewhat disappointed.
Every
athlete. Like, I mean, I was a scholarship athlete at UConn, and I was upset that I didn't get Penn State, right? Like, it's they're all fundamentally have incredibly high expectations, maybe inflated expectations, right? As to what and if they don't go to the biggest of the big, I don't care that there's even scholarship guys, even at like, UMass or you got, like, if they didn't go to Penn State, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, like they all feel like they're on this uphill climb to prove everyone that they're better than they are. So
yeah, the buzz phrase "slept on" is like my favorite buzz phrase of all time. Like, guys, you realize that like there's so much access to your like film and like everything. Like, if you're slept on, like it's got to be your fault. It's got to be your fault because like
you did something, dude.
There's so much ability to have like your film reviewed. There's so many camps to go. Like, dude, if you're a baller, like go ball out at Penn State. I promise you, Alan Zamitis is gonna figure out how to get you a scholarship there. Like,
I think that's a huge thing, and I because I deal with parents all the time. It's always the same. The only ones that ever express true gratitude as if they landed at Ohio State. And usually, as soon as that happens, they're not talking to me anymore anyway. So that's exactly and Derek, you're right. Am I right on it? They're the only ones that,
we see it all the time.
Example, but any one of these gigantic blue blood Division I programs.
There's like 8 programs in the whole country where guys feel like they're valued properly.
Yes. It's like, hey, if you're not playing on Saturday,
and then if you're a 3-star, you're not valued properly. So if you're a 3-star and you go to Georgia, you're not valued properly because you're a 3-star and nobody they didn't give. So maybe the top 200, 300 kids in the whole entire country feel like they're valued properly. Everyone else does not. So when people say this over and over again, I'm like, do you know how many times I hear that you're undervalued? You're valued because if you're getting recruited, you're valued. Now,
you're valued.
What you said is 100% right. Find a place that you're valued most and go there. I think that's really a really, really true thing. And athletes that do that, I think, have very successful college experiences. You have relationships from when you played at Rowan that are with you for a lifetime. Derek has them from Montclair. I have them from playing at UConn. And it's those things go with you through a lifetime. And I don't think the parents and the kids realize it. And I think one of the things that's really happened in football, which is really interesting, is you get next generation kids. So kids of parents who played at the college level, those kids have a certain level of education. The process has changed, but they kind of temper expectations very well. And then you have the athlete whose parents didn't play that happen to be very good. They happen to be very good, but a lot of times their parents have a hard time navigating the process, even when they get educated, because they don't have experience with it. And you have these years now for the first time, because football or sports in general in the last 30 years have really gone to a whole nother level in America. And you have so many kids of athletes that played in college that they know what's going on for the most part, right? They know kind of where their kid fits. He could be here, he could be there. And then you have a ton of athletes also that are very good that parents did not play because they were from a generation. Maybe they went and worked right away, or they didn't have the opportunity. They might have been decent athletes, didn't have the opportunity, whatever the reason is. And so then you have to educate those people in a different way. And that's kind of I always found this to be a little bit difficult for the college coaches, because the son of a kid who played, and people are like, well, he's just getting it because his father played at Division III or Division II or Division. Well, what it is, and we heard this yesterday, I think it was, and the coaches are recruiting the parents too, right? And if the parents have an understanding of the process a little better, and when you explain something to them, it seems like they get it, which means they're also going to communicate it to their kid better, who have a better chance to get it. That's part of it. So, like I would say, parents that did not play, you've got to really figure out the process and listen to what your coach says to you, your high school coach. Listen to what the college coach says to you, okay? Because their job hinges on them winning. So there's really very little reason for them. If you want them to lie to you, you could force them into a lie by pestering them on something. But if you really listen to what they're saying to you, they're really telling you where you are, and you got to kind of try to listen to that. So talk a little bit about it. I don't know. Am I off base on that at all, or is that true?
No, yeah. So it's actually funny because I was going to bring this up earlier, and this is kind of a good segue to this, where to think on this a little bit is, I think that same thing could be applied for like high school programs where the coach pumps out scholarship guys all the time versus they're not a great program and there's one guy who is a pretty good player, and he hasn't really been around what it means to be a scholarship player. But now this guy's like insistent that like this kid's a full scholarly guy versus like when you're in the high schools that like have the full scholarly guys annually, they can give you a soup, even though those places are much more like they're over recruited, right? Like a guy that might not really be a full scholarship player will get one somewhere sometimes just because
I lived it.
The branding, right? But ultimately, like if you're a those coaches have a much better like feel for like, hey, like this is what a scholarship player looks like, right? And this is how a scholarship player plays versus, no like shade at like a small school, but like a group one school that doesn't really pump out those types of guys. And all of a sudden they have this kid who looks like a man amongst boys, in their group.
Right. Oh, he's a scholarship guy. He's a 5-star guy.
Yeah. Like, and some of that is just lack of knowledge. Some of that is like,
you just haven't been around it.
Like ego of that coach of like wanting to say
I finally got one. I got one.
Yeah, I got that scholarship player,
Yes.
But and so like I think, right, you can flip that back to the parents on like you're 100% right, right? The people who have had more exposure, they're naturally more educated on the process, on what it really means to be a full scholarship player versus not. And like at the end of the day, like I said earlier, like the market dictates your value, right? Like I always laugh at like, yeah, you might be a really productive player, but like that university places value in linemen that are 6'4" and above. And that is what it is. Like at the end of the day, like you can't teach height. And if they're confident in their ability to develop a guy who has like the measurables, that's their prerogative on how they want to approach recruiting. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that they have the money and they get to dictate what they do with it, but the market ultimately dictates your value. And so, yeah, I mean, I think you're 100% right on the whole, like really have your ears open and kind of be able to look at it, especially as the parents, be able to sit back and listen from like an objective viewpoint of like, this guy doesn't know me at all, doesn't know my kid, doesn't really have an invested interest either way if my kid is a scholarship player or isn't. And he's telling me that like, hey, we love him, but if he doesn't have anything higher level at this point, then his value has been determined, And so I think that sometimes it's a tough pill to swallow. Some of that is like, we've invested a ton of money in like training our kid and going to those 7-on-7s and the AAU like generation of, like, again, I don't want to like date myself, but like when I was growing up, like
right.
if you played like AAU hoops, you were
good.
You were a dog.
You were good.
Like if you were playing on an AAU team, you were like one of the best players in like the conference, like in the area. Like now it's like guys that sit the bench are playing AAU ball.
Yeah, like, oh, coach, I'm on this club team. It's like that's because daddy paid for you to be on.
I can tell you this. Right? I can tell you it firsthand, seeing like my 9-year-old happens to be on a really good, really elite team, and they're third graders, and they won the championship over these fourth graders. But some of these teams we play, I'm like, wait a minute, how is this a travel team? Like my son's a point guard and they're playing him at center and forward because we have a team of all point guards on the team. Everybody's really good. So there are other guys that handle the ball maybe a little bit better, right? And and then I see some of these teams. I'm like, wait a minute, this is a travel team? Like, their kids that can't dribble. And
listen, if like the expectations are like, I just want my kid to enjoy it and I'm willing to do it.
But isn't that wreck?
But that also is why there's like, now they've created like levels, right? Like level, whatever, right? Like, go participate and enjoy it and embrace it. Like I'm kind of for that. If like everybody is on the same page on like, my kid really loves basketball.
Right.
Rec is only 1 day a week. This allows him to play basketball 3 days a week competitively. Right. And he gets to play against people who it's kind of like skill-based matchmaking, right? Like he gets to go like play.
That's true. That's a good point. It's a really good point. Actually, the other point that you brought up was really good too. You said, hey, they go to all these different 7-on-7s and trainers and they feel like they invested this money. But I actually think about it like this. If you didn't do all that, maybe your son wouldn't even be a recruitable player. So you did a great job as a parent, giving your kid every opportunity. Now he's actually a recruitable guy because if he was 5'8", 150 pounds and didn't do all those things, he would just be a high school football player, which used to happen in the older days. That's how it was.
Which is where the buck stops for like 95% of people. right?
Like
So
the
it's
majority of people don't even play. Like
Don't play.
you're already in a small percentage of guys that are even, if you're even quote unquote recruitable, you're already on a different level of half of your freaking team that you're playing on, you know?
Yeah, we always talked about, like, it was always funny. Like I have obviously a bunch of buddies that play college ball at different places, and like we'd be out somewhere and we'd always laugh. Like my one buddy who played receiver he started at Rutgers, but then transferred to Southern Illinois. Also another Atlantic City kid. Like we would always be cracking up. Like we'd be at a bar or at a restaurant watching a game and be like we as college athletes, we compare our athleticism to like Micah Parsons. We're like, man, like we're not really there. Like the general public, like they have really no clue like what the levels of that are, right? And so like they're like, yeah, I'm a decent athlete. Like I love going to like an NBA game or a college game where like halftime they have some like competition to go out and like shoot, and it's just some random Joe, and they're like jamming the ball off like the bottom of the rim on like, and like this is the majority of the population. Like you realize like us as like legit Division III players, like we're still in like the super elite athleticism of like mankind, right? Like we just compare ourselves to like the greatest in the history of the world, right? So like, I mean, it's so funny to think about it that way, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I always say there's freaks are the college athletes, super freaks are the scholarship athletes, and the freaks of the freaks are the guys that you see, you know, on TV, you know, on Sunday. And it's funny when people rip like, oh, he sucks. This quarterback sucks. Like, yeah, well, okay,
Listen,
relative to the other mega freakazoids, yeah, maybe he sucks. But if you came out here and threw a pass at your flag football Sunday pickup game with your buddies drinking beers, you wouldn't be able to catch his ball.
You remember the story about like Brian Scalabrine, like going on like New York radio or Boston radio and being like, I'll play one-on-one against anybody like in the city. Like who wants it? Like he like was spotting everybody like 11 points and just like beating everybody. Like it was just like, oh, you think I stink because I'm like some like unathletic redheaded dude at the end of the bench? Like
I'm still in the NBA, bro.
I'll cook all of you. Like
it's so true. It's so true. You bring up some great points there. Yeah. So as far as you know, this and we'll kind of wrap it up here. By the way, fantastic having you on. Anytime you ever want to come on, I think we got to send out a camera guy for your Rowan versus Montclair game. I just think on principle alone, send somebody out to film the interactions there on that game. But it's as far as upcoming season, like what are your expectations? What do you tell your team for upcoming season? Because you're in a unique spot. Like you very rarely does a coach get the job, you know, at the I guess May time frame, right? And May, June timeframe.
Yeah,
and
June 20th. I was
June 20th. So we're talking a month, not even a month, right? So very rarely does it happen. How do you set proper expectations and what do you tell them about the future too?
It's a great question. You know, I don't know if I live in a world of proper expectations. You know, and whether it's like, you know, I've been just super fortunate, like however much I impacted every program I've been a part of obviously varies, but like I've never lost, right? I mean, in terms of like, we've never been a part of like my worst season in my coaching career in 10 years is 8-3. Right. And so like when I sit and the third loss in that 3 is a postseason game, right? So like an 8-2 year is like the worst year I've been a part of. Right. And it's so interesting. Just, you know, I do think like you kind of alluded to it earlier, like I'm watching the tape and the cupboard is hardly bare. Right. I mean, like you know, I've been watching some film, like we have some guys in spots and
like I think other people, I think not to cut you off, coach, but like I think people feel like because Rowan hasn't been like in the limelight or in a national championship game like in the last couple of years that like all of a sudden this is like a dead program. Like what the hell are we talking about? Like I don't think people understand any of that, right? It was the same with Montclair a couple years ago when they were like not very good. It was like, oh, Montclair's done. Like this is that. It's like, dude, I know Rowan is gonna have players no matter.
So Yeah. So expectations, I mean, we have 4 out of conference games now, opponents that I'm extremely familiar with, right? Open up against Stevenson on Thursday night at their place. And, we played them in a bowl game in 2018 and playing McDaniel, who I played against they're in right now we're in a scheduling deal with the Centennial, and those schools I'm super familiar with.
Yeah.
We have to go at Ursinus, at Hopkins on the road back to back, which is tough. Ursinus is always a tough place to play. And then Hopkins has been one of the best teams in the country for a decade, right? And then it's like no rest for the weary. Like you get into conference play, you have a home game against TCNJ, who has been better and have been like competing at a high level. And, and then you're on the road at Salisbury, at Christopher Newport, back to back again, right? So this is a great welcome gift in my first season as a head guy in terms of the scheduling. We're actually 6 away for home this year. In terms of how the schedule broke down. But, I'm never going to go into a season saying we're not looking to compete for an NJAC championship. I mean, that's the bottom line. I think that they went 4-2 a year ago. There was a scenario in the last day of the season last year where there was like a 4-way tie on the table for the NJAC. So they were pretty close at getting a piece of that pie a year ago. I think the big thing for me is like, hey, here's what our culture is going to be. I talk about like, and you alluded to it, like there's an awesome foundation here, and I just want to show our guys, like, here's my expectations on how we're going to compete on a daily basis, how we're going to prepare on a weekly basis. We're always looking to beat the best team on our schedule, and that's how we're going to prepare every single week of the entire year. We're not going to be a roller coaster program on how we prep, how we review film, how long we practice, whether we go outside or stay inside based on weather, based on our opponent. That'll never be who we are here. We will always handle every opponent as opponent 1, opponent 2. And I know that sounds cliche, but like, I think the best programs in the country, they're going to come and play at their level every week. And if you can play with them, it's going to be an awesome football game. It's probably going to come down to a handful of plays. And if you can't play, then you're going to get rolled off the field, and that's going to be the mentality that we're going to have every single week. I told guys on my first Zoom call, we're not going to win every game every year, but I can promise you this, that, we're going to do our best job to put you guys in a position to be successful on both sides of the football every single week. I have a ton of belief in our process and how we go about preparing. I have a ton of confidence in the guys that, that I believe are going to be kind of the core of the offensive staff here moving forward in that same regard. And yeah, I just hope everybody sees a football team that's going to come out and play super hard. They're not going to give a yard that's not earned. And really, and this is not in any dirty way, you're just going to play a team that, like, the day after you play us, you're going to have more guys you're going to have more guys in your training room the day after you play us. And that's not a dirty thing. That's just like, you're going to know you felt what we're all about for 60 minutes, and that's the team you're going to see on the field on Saturdays. And that's going to start this fall. I already told our guys, like, this is going to be the hardest camp you guys have ever been a part of. We're going to smoke out the pretenders. We're going to crank up the heat, and we're going to see, like, when the rubber meets the road, who are the playmakers, who are the ballers, who are the guys that are really tough, who are about it. And those are the guys that are going to suit up for us in the 2 deep on Saturdays this fall. So, yeah, really excited. And I know that, I'm not trying to create any bulletin board material or anything like that, but like, we're competing for an NJAC championship. And that's always going to be the mentality. And that's the mentality of Rowan football. Like, we've never been a program here that believes that anything other than winning is acceptable. And that's not going to change under my leadership.
No doubt. That's that linebacker dog, and you're right there. You got it ready to go. It's really, really great having you on. I think that mindset is just the only way that you can succeed, man. One game at a time and keep stacking.
Smoke out the pretenders, baby. I love that. I
think that's great. Day by day and game by game, and you come out, and a lot of good things have happened as they've had happen, for you in the past. And obviously we'll continue on as well. And I think your breadth of experience right around the area that you're in is also really interesting. Like Towson,
Yes.
Susquehanna, Muhlenberg, Rowan. Like
That
it's a real that's you can almost draw a circle around the areas you've been and it shows what a good fit you are for Rowan, because that's
perfect.
basically been the main recruiting hubs for you over the last 10 years or so. So it's really, really, really awesome. And I can't thank you enough for coming on, Derek.
Yeah, Coach, I appreciate it. Like I said, I think you can feel that. Like I went to Rowan, that alumni vibe, like coming off of you, it radiates. You know what I'm saying? So, guys sitting down in the office with you, like talking about tweeners, talking about this stuff, talking about like this is a place you're gonna want to be. Like we're gonna pose this like a Division I program where you're gonna get all that stuff that maybe some other Division III schools can't do it, and I just know that the NJAC is some of the best Division III football in the country, no matter where you are. These guys, if you can make it through the NJAC, like you can compete for a playoff like win, right? And I just think it radiates off you, Coach. I really appreciate you coming on. I look forward to seeing what you do, and I wish you all the success in the world, except for one game a year.
Yeah, I really do appreciate that. And I would love, you said it earlier. Let's get some 4K cameras out to the Montclair Rowan game this year and make it a little bit of a mini doc.
We will.
I think
I'm going to send our guy out.
I'm going to send our guy out.
I'm telling you right now. Once we put out what it's all about,
it's going to be insane.
Is it at your place or is it at?
It's homecoming for us.
Okay, cool. So you're the guy. I'm going to send our guy who does all of our stuff, who's phenomenal, right, Derek?
Awesome.
Sparks is the man.
We're going to make sure that he's available that weekend to go out and like
awesome.
And get a bunch of like B-roll and high caliber stuff and put the highlights of that whole entire weekend on there. So
awesome.
That's a done deal. I'll make sure we send out for that that date and get somebody down there for it and really pub it.
Well, it's really, really enjoyable being on with you guys. I really appreciate it. Just really excited about the job, and just to the alums and the supporters, like I want you around, I want you present, and I want you guys to be excited and energized about Rowan football, because I'm really excited for this next chapter, and hopefully you guys are too.
Absolutely, Coach. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you real soon.
Appreciate it, Coach. Take care, buddy.
Yep. Go.
All right, Derek. Well, that was great. Oh, I don't know.
Told you, bro. Like you get these younger guys that are
love the energy
their programs, dude.
Love the energy. Love the listen. So that's cool. So we're gonna send out. I'm gonna talk.
Dude, I'm interested to see what like they have in
and then
store.
we could voice over it like what we see. So we'll send them out. Get all the camera footage. Boom, coming back. It'll be great. We'll get the sights and sounds of everything.
Listen. The foundation is there for that program itself, like you said, like even recruiting wise, like his ties to that geographical area, because we kind of look at D3 programs that are very geographically, like they recruit geographically, right? Like kind of in their area. They sit in a pretty spot in terms of that circle of guys, and then his ties to Susquehanna, Muhlenberg, the DMV, right, with all those kind of stuff, because we've been down in Delaware. We see that talent. That's right there. We see that Philly talent. Like, that's right there. It's going to be interesting to see kind of what he does with it all.
I look at our comments, dude. I can't.
They're coming.
I can't take these people are crazy, dude. People are crazy. I think he's really going to do a great job. I didn't realize that I didn't put it together that he has him and AZ are really good friends. Alan Zymitis. So Alan was like our main guy. We used to go to all these different events in the early days. He was one of our DB specialists, and he had played at Penn State. It was
shit, bro. If they're talking about trying to dial up double corner blitz, like you're talking some dudes that are like, let's go.
Yeah, no, he was really, really big guy too. Big guy for DB. Like he was taller than me. But I think I don't know, he might have been All-American at Penn State. So but yeah,
now he's the recruiting coordinator there.
Yeah, he's the recruiting coordinator at Penn State. So which reminds me, I'm gonna hit him up. So all these things, it's moving so fast. We're getting so many great guys on. It's almost like we have to keep pace now. At first it was like, we're like, okay, who do we want to bring on? And now we're like, oh yeah, we can bring on, this guy or that guy, but he was fantastic. I look forward to it. I look forward to seeing the result of the Rowan
Yeah, especially coming in so late though, too. Like, you know what I mean? Like June 20th, dude. Like he got hired. Like that's like, whew. Like, whew.
That's yeah. I mean, it's amazing. But I think it gave him. It also gives an opportunity too, right? So, because if you go in January, right? Maybe
right. You have this monster
pool
of guys. Now everything's
like 20
trickled
years
down.
Experience, right. So now, I think it gives you more of a chance for a job because a lot of people had jobs at that point where they wanted to stay and stuff. So,
yep.
But really interesting. It was interesting that there was over 100 applicants too. That's
it's insane.
It's amazing.
There's not that many of those gigs, dude. We talk about it all the time.
When people always say, "Oh, why can't you go get a job in college?" It's like, wait a minute. They're like, do you realize that everybody wants to be a paid well college coach? This is not like
because they all think like you sign up.
It's like you're going to work at Walmart. You're going to work at Walmart. Like you're going to be the cashier at Walmart. That's what they look at it like what?
But get paid like this. You know what I mean? Driving around in a Maserati or God knows whatever. Like.
It's very funny. It's very funny people's perspectives, and I the thing about like that's why I brought it up. The point about like every player who doesn't go to the biggest of the big college, and even those when they're a 3-star, they're unhappy. Like they're mad they were 3-star. So if they don't get the exact school they want, they're unhappy for a certain period of time until they get there, and then they get there. And if they do well and they do what they're supposed to, they're usually very, very happy. But it's very funny because I think every parent or athlete that says that they're under recruited, they think they're the only
they think like they're the only human.
They're the only one that's been under recruited in the whole history. I'm like, don't you realize everybody feels that way other than the guys who are literally 5 stars and maybe 4 stars? That's it. Like 250, 300 kids in the whole country feel like, you know what? I'm adequately recruited. Everybody else feels like they're not I only had 2 even kids that go to Division I. I only had 3 scholarships. You see it in the NFL. I had 1 scholarship offer out of college, D1 school. It's
Josh
like,
Allen.
well, you had one. You actually had one. There's both
I actually listen. He brought up Aaron Donald. I actually was listening to that. Aaron Donald only had like Pitt, Toledo, Bowling Green. That was it.
Right, but the point is, he still had Division.
He had offers, right?
Right. It wasn't like he was like some slappy. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't a slappy. Okay, he still had offers, right? So it was and the reason why he had those 3 is probably because they questioned the height, right? So
and that's what it was. And he didn't care because he wanted to go to Pitt anyway from the jump. He's a Pittsburgh kid. Like it didn't matter.
It's very
like Coach said. It's all about go where you're wanted, and we can say this over and over again.
You know what youth parents say? This is the funniest. I can't wait till 5 years. Well, your daughter's just turned 1, right? So I can't wait till maybe about like Troy's age, like it's 6, 7 years to have a conversation with you. Oh, this is what the funniest thing that all parents say. Well, as long as he gets a scholarship somewhere. I'm like, what? I'm like,
really? Be like, yeah, you don't care. Like if he gets now he's got a scholarship to Idaho, and now you got to fly out to Idaho.
Well, my thing is, I want to ask him, how many people besides me do you know that got full scholarships? If you can name, if you can name more than 2 or 3 that you know really well,
then you are different.
Yes, full scholarship. I'm not talking about partial. I'm talking full scholarship in Middletown.
Full ride, 100%, hands down. Like. Here you go. Not, oh, well, my first year I did this, and then I worked my way, and then I got this. No, dude. Like, you're a FBS Division I scholarship player. If you can name
all your friends in our
everybody,
how many guys? All the guys that our kids play together, all of us. I don't know, what is there? 300. Oh, out of the 300, I want to know how many. There might, if there's a couple. If there's 2
maybe
or 3,
if there's 5, I'd be shocked.
I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked. Like I can't even think of, and I know guys.
I would even go as far as to say any sport.
Football definitely can't name 5. Any sport, I know guys that played in the major leagues that didn't. They went Division I, but they didn't get full ride.
No, because other sports don't even do that.
Right, exactly. So that's my point.
And most people don't know that, right?
They don't know that.
Like,
they don't realize that, right? Then these guys played in the major leagues. Okay,
but they're going to be the ones that are going to sit down across from a coach and tell them you should be giving my kid a full scholarship.
That's the thing. I don't know how you get this through to people, but I don't think you do. You don't.
Tack hammer.
I've been doing it for so long that I'm convinced that you
can't
just have to deal with each situation as it is.
Each one is individualized. Each one is a case by case basis.
You're not going to get it through. You have to deal with everything case by case because that process, since it's been around for 100 years, and no matter what changes in the process,
it's what it is.
It's very hard for people to get to. It's just and I think that's why you do see
it's only gotten worse because of now the exposure of everything with social media. That now things like people are seeing like this is actually how it works, and now it's like a double-edged sword because you would think that would now open people up to kind of like further educate themselves or kind of like really dive into like the intangibles of like how do I do it, what do I do, what's the how does it work, what's the layout of it, right? And then on the other side it's like you're only seeing, like Coach just said, like that percent that's like the minuscule number, right? Like you said, even us as Division III athletes, like we're so far ahead of, or like we're above all of these other percentages of people that never even like sniffed a college sport or even a high school sport, right? And we were Division III guys, and we just compare ourselves because that's how you
coach me. I wasn't Division III guy, so don't include me in that.
Buddy, listen, you went to UConn, right? Like, and they were FCS. We're good.
Yeah. What we're gonna say is, it's the other point is like I think that's why whether it's Division III, Division II, FCS, or FBS, parents of those groups, I think college coaches are comfortable talking to those athletes of those parents because and I see a lot like not only are they athletically probably pretty good to begin with because their parents played at a high level,
right?
But they also, the parents understand the process a little bit more, even though it's changed. So you can have a conversation, even if they're not happy about certain things, they understand what happens better. Right. So when a coach takes that kid in, they know that athlete's going to have a certain conversation with their parent if things don't go well. It's going to be a different conversation versus someone who did not play at a really any college level. Their parents are learning it on the fly, and they have to reach out to other sources. And that part, I think, is unique. And it's unique in America in the sense that now sports are so big in the last 25, 30 years that now you're seeing so many second generation athletes. Right. In the beginning, it was.
Look at Notre Dame's recruiting class. Jerome Bettis' kid, Plaxico Burris' kid, Ike Taylor's kid. Like, you're talking 3 high-level NFL pros, and their sons all go into one college Division I athletes, right?
And it's probably easier to get a message through to them when you're having the conversation, what we're evaluating. And you can even have a more candid conversation because I forgot to bring this up. I wanted to bring it up. I was curious his thoughts on this, and I'm pissed at myself for not asking it. A lot of times I'll see this, and I don't know if you ever heard of this. So a college coach will say to a player that comes to their camp and maybe has a few offers or opportunities, and he'll say to him, he's like, "Man, I'm shocked you don't have more." But he doesn't recruit that guy. You see what I'm saying? Like, you should have more opportunities, but you're not recruiting.
But you're not but like, if that's the case, then you're saying that, then the offer from me should be on the table already. Like, here it is.
Right? I always say, did that guy offer you? And they say, oh, the guy says he doesn't really have any more spots, but he could.
Well, if other people should be offering you, like, then why am I?
That coach is lying to you.
100%. Like, that's a guy right there off my list. I don't care what it is. It might be your dream school. I don't want to play for a guy like that.
That guy's lying to you because he's trying to throw other schools under the bus while
Yeah, that
he's
whole
not.
negatively recruiting thing
Yeah.
of like, I've never been a believer in that. Like, I'm not
Yep.
about to badmouth any other programs or whatever. I'm just going to showcase or highlight what I feel is like the way we do things, how we do it. Like, this is the way,
Like I hate
I
when
don't
someone
care
says,
what all those. I don't care what that school said to you. I don't care what they promised you or they. That's not what we do here. That's not gonna happen here. And if you think you're gonna come here and then that's gonna happen later,
I
it's not gonna it's not worth it. So look,
absolutely.
like good luck. Go somewhere else. Good luck. It is what it is.
I don't
But
understand and I wish and I'm going to ask you this.
especially now with
Why
the
would
way
they?
guys
Why
can
would you say to a
transfer
kid?
or bounce around,
I
you
hear this
want to
quite
keep those
often.
relationships in
I,
case
I
a
hear this
kid
quite often. Though
comes
you're not
back.
offering, but you're saying you're throwing some other school in their bus that they should have offered you, and it's like, wait a minute, like you're not offering me. Why are you throwing another school? So you're saying your school's better than that school? Like, and if so, I
And
just
if so, and I can't get recruited by either.
yeah, exactly. So now you're telling me I'm not. So now you're telling me what you're basically saying
Not only are
is
you saying no, but you're
the
also
coach.
saying like, you're not even good enough to play there. Like,
No, what you're saying is like, everybody who's helping you is in like your
yeah, they
coaches
have
or
no
what.
idea.
Yeah, they don't because you should be going over to this school instead of coming over by me. It's like no, that's nonsense too. But this guy was phenomenal. I think he's going to be very successful.
I think
I
he's
love
going to
his
do really well
mentality.
there. The NJAC needs to be on notice. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And Rowan has, I think, just like Montclair does too. Okay, because of where they are in North Jersey. Rowan has the advantage of being
Absolutely.
in the Philly area, right? And
And especially with him
and
being like an Atlantic City guy, right? Like
yeah,
we obviously see the South Jersey, Philly area even more so now, especially with like, the Fran Brown era going on at
yep,
Syracuse. Like he has gone down there and rated it. And we've talked about it, like the talent level that we see from some of these guys down there, your St. Joseph Philly guys, like all of that Catholic Pennsylvania league, like they're studs, dude. That can be,
studs.
I don't want to compare it to the Big North, but like they got some
Well,
schools
they
that
split
right
up the
there,
town.
man.
There's a lot of Catholic schools in Philadelphia and around. Not on the New Jersey side as many, but there are a few.
Right.
But on the Philly side,
You
PA
got
side,
the
there's
whole
so
Camden
many.
area,
They're
man. Like
splitting up the. They're splitting up the. So people are like, well, they may not be as good as the. So even though we say the talent is diluted in North Jersey because there's like 7 of those programs, in Philly and the surrounding suburban areas over there, there's probably 20
easily.
parochial schools. So you're splitting them up among a lot of schools. So there really is a ton of talent in
And
that
then
area.
you're talking
It's not
about those
overlooked.
high level publics, dude, that are so
Yes.
good that like, and we're not talking like you got some of the best Group 1 teams where you can definitely go and find some of those Division 3 players down there that dominate that
And
world,
Philly's
right?
better football as a city than New York City, right?
Correct.
So Philly football is a big deal because PA has always been a football area. So it doesn't matter.
Yep. And then his ties to Susquehanna and Muhlenberg,
Yep.
like Townsend, like he knows what schools to like where we're going or what we're doing. I mean, look, we look at Delaware, we go down there, like you know what I'm
I'm
saying, like
amazed at the talent down there.
Middletown, brand, like come on, man, like there's
dudes there.
It's gonna be
dudes.
awesome. It's really gonna be cool to see how he kind of like develops and builds this thing. And look, to me, he may say whatever, but like. This is a throwaway year, dude. Like you took over at the end of June. Like it is what it is. He ain't gonna treat it like that. It's not going to be. But like if I'm the administration, like he gets a whole pass on this year.
Pass. Yeah, pass. And absolutely. Which is actually really like it's almost like you're playing with house money in the first year. You're playing with house money that first
He's
year.
got 6 road games, 4 home games. Win those 4 home games and beat Montclair. Game over.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think that I don't know what the rosters look like, you know.
What did he say? We're gonna smoke him out. We're gonna smoke out the pretenders. I love that. This is gonna be the hardest camp you're gonna go through. I'm like thinking Junction Boy status. Like, here we go, man. Like, it's gonna be awesome though, because like I love that. Like, we're gonna look. You're either gonna be all on board and be a guy that we're gonna work for, or you know what? You're not gonna be here, and that's okay too. Like, you know, maybe this just isn't cut. This isn't what you're cut for.
Trying to see if there's any. Oh, Bernardi is there. From Lacey, from our very first.
The Noah.
Very first team, the quarterback from Lacey. Yep. Let's see.
Listen, he's calling defense, coach. He wants killers.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I like that too. Let me see. Isaac. I'm just curious to see if there's.
I bet you there's not as many short guys as you think.
Ruley from Howell, I remember him, linebacker. There's a ton of the area that we mentioned, right? So, they gotta.
And he's only going to expand from there.
He does have some short. He does have short guys. He does have a decent amount of short guys, definitely. He definitely has a decent amount of short guys. Definitely, he's got some Mid-South guys. He's got some Raritan guys. You know, he's got an interesting mix. I mean, obviously that Philly area is just a home run. I mean, holy cow! You know, even including obviously the New Jersey side, and most of his guys, I would say, I'm looking here. You know what? He doesn't even have like PA guys. He's got a couple of Maryland, a couple of.
It's going to be mostly Jersey.
It's because it's a state school, right? So,
yep. And then remember, like North Jersey guys, like to them, like, hey, that's like going away.
Yeah, I don't see a ton of. There's a few.
I don't think he recruited really hard. Plus, you're battling against Keene and Montclair State, right? And that's, hey, mom and dad can come to every game and all this other kind of stuff.
Right. But yeah, I mean that Philly area, they got a ton of guys on the Jersey side. Cherry Hill,
that like Western type.
Trenton, Camden,
Ewing,
suburbs of those areas. But he's got a good amount of short conference guys. Remember the gigantic type when we were at RBR? They had a gigantic tight end that were like, this kid could be good, and we killed him in the game, but we're like, this kid could be good. That kid is at he's 6'5", 6'4" tight end. He's at Rowan. Like, so they have some, and I think his recruiting is only going to go through obviously the roof from that standpoint.
Listen, to me, any kid he sits down and has a conversation with, like just immediately, just the way he presents it comes across, like you're on my list. Like, so he's already won that. Parents are gonna love that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, this guy's an alum. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to have the support. Rowan really does do a good job of, like most of their coaches, like, played there.
Absolutely. It's a great show. Let's get off on the I realize now why I was thinking 11, because who did we do at 11?
Yesterday.
Was it?
Was supposed to be 11.
And wasn't the day before? Didn't we do the day before 11 too?
We did Monday. Coach Luciani, we did at 11.
Is that right? Right. That's why
on Monday.
Thank goodness I was home when you texted me. I was home, so I was like,
"Oh, good.
Okay, cool. Let me mosey my way downstairs."
He was just juiced up to get on, man. He was.
Oh yeah. All right, we're out.